everybody, my name's Lara. I'm a dual Canadian British national and I moved from the UK to British Columbia, Canada in November 2022 with my husband and my 2 dogs, and we're absolutely loving our life out here. We love it so much. In today's video I'm just going to briefly go over how we moved from the UK to Canada. I have another video on my channel which kind of shows our timeline, and they're just little clips that I filmed on my iPhone and edited together of different stages of the application. We did the Outland Spousal sponsorship program, which is an immigration route available to non-Canadians that are married to Canadian citizens for them to get permanent residency in Canada. I know there are different sponsorship programs available. So there's common law sponsorship, which is for when you're in a relationship but not married. I know there's family sponsorship routes, but we're just going to be going over the Outland sponsorship program because that's the one that we did. Just a disclaimer, I'm not an immigration consultant or specialist. This is just how our experience went and just some helpful tips that I'm offering, but please do your own research because, as I say, I'm not a professional, so I'm just offering anything that I think might be helpful. So if you go onto the IRCC website, I'll link the page down below. You can check if you're eligible to sponsor and also if the person you're going to sponsor is eligible too. There's just some certain requirements that you have to meet before you can start the application process. But so long as you're both eligible, you can go ahead and get the application package, see what you need to do and start applying. When we submitted our application, which was November 2021, they were accepting paper applications, so we actually mailed our application. Since we've done ours, I know it has all moved online now, so I can't offer any advice or experience on the online process because we did submit ours by paper. There are 2 types of spousal sponsorship programs available. So there's Outland and Inland. Outland is when you're applying from outside Canada and Inland is when you're applying from within Canada. During the application process, the Canadian citizen is going to be the sponsor and the non-Canadian citizen is going to be the principal applicant / person being sponsored. Along with the application forms that you're filling out, you also have to provide additional supporting documents, and these are going to vary based on different circumstances and things like that. Just a disclaimer, I'm not an immigration consultant or specialist. This is just how our experience went and just some helpful tips that I'm offering, but please do your own research because, as I say, I'm not a professional, so I'm just offering anything that I think might be helpful. So at the time when we applied, we were asked to show evidence of things like living together and proving our relationship was genuine. So for that, examples of what we did was we sent in screenshots of, like, sometimes we've lent each other money, so we included that in there. We included joint travel insurance documents, joint bank accounts, government issued letters of us both living at the same address, pictures of us travelling all over the world, pictures of us with friends and family. We also shared a few text messages between each other which dated as far back as when we first started dating so that they could see we've been together for a long time. All they're trying to basically do in this application with all these supporting documents is that they want proof that your relationship is genuine and that you're not just married and doing this spousal sponsorship for one of you to get entry into Canada, basically. That's what they're trying to look for when you're submitting all these documents. Something else they asked us for, and I don't know if it's still the same now, but it definitely was when we applied, is that they want evidence that you're going to live in Canada once the application process is completed. So just some helpful tips that I have for this one. I contacted a few realtors out here and also recruitment agencies and explained that I'd been moving to Canada in however long it was, a few months, and explained that I'd been moving to Canada and that I wanted to register with them so that when I arrived in Canada I could just get started on looking for a job and looking for a house, things like that. I had Facebook statuses back in 2017, 2018, talking about mine and Richard's move to Canada because we'd been planning it for so long, so I included screenshots of those. And then something we did as well to show that we were going to live in Canada is we have a friend that lives here in Penticton where we live, and we stayed at her house for the first few days while we got settled. So we had her write us a letter inviting us to stay at her house, and we submitted that as proof that we were going to live in Canada once the application was complete as well. Because I know it can be a little bit tricky to think of what to submit for that, because how do you show evidence that you're going to live somewhere that you don't live right now? But if you can just show that you've contacted some recruitment agencies out there, that maybe you've started looking at houses, just little things to show that you do plan on living there once your process is completed. The person being sponsored will have to have their biometrics done and also a medical, and submit police certificates for every country that they've lived in. The person being sponsored will also have to submit 2 photos, which are very specific requirements, but IRCC will let you know of these requirements. Once your application is complete and IRCC receive it, they'll send you an AOR, which is an acknowledgement of receipt. When you get this basically means that you've done the application correctly, everything is there that needs to be, and that they're going to start officially processing it. The person being sponsored will also receive instructions from IRCC as to when they need to give their biometrics and when they need to do their medical. So don't go out and do them, they'll contact you when they want you to do them. And as long as IRCC are happy with your application, they will send you a COPR email, which is a confirmation of permanent residency. And this email, well, this is how it was for my husband anyway. This email just stated that he'd been granted a confirmation of permanent residency, and he just needed to go back with a little bit of paperwork, which was just confirming that no details had changed, 2 more additional photos. So he'd already done 2 with his initial application, he had to send another 2, and just informing them that none of his contact details had changed. That paperwork had to be shipped off to the biometric centre where he gave his biometric. We paid a courier fee to them to have the documents returned back to us once they'd been processed. Once my husband had submitted the final documents to the biometric centre, it took about a month for him to be issued the official confirmation of permanent residency documents, which were couriered to him at home in the UK. The final stage of your process is landing in Canada and having your landing interview. I don't know if this is the same at all Canadian airports, but it is this way at Vancouver Airport. When you go through passport control, they have 2 separate lines. So there's one for Canadian citizens and permanent residents, and then visitors to Canada. Even though you're arriving with your confirmation of permanent residency papers, you're not considered a permanent resident yet because you haven't landed in Canada. So you're not going to go in the permanent residence queue, you're going to go in the visitors queue. And when you meet with your passport officer, just explain that you're landing in Canada for the first time with your confirmation of permanent residency papers, and they'll direct you to the immigration room centre within the airport after passport control but before customs, and they'll direct you where to go and what you need to do next. As I didn't do the landing interview myself, this is just going off of my husband's experience, but he said they really didn't ask him too many questions. It was just kind of questions like, are you planning on working in Canada? Are you still married to your spouse? Have any of your contact details changed? Do you have any criminal offences? Just little questions like that, nothing major. Stamped it, welcomed him to Canada, and he had permanent residency. And I guess that was about an hour in total, but a lot of that was wait time as well. At present, we are currently still waiting for his PR card. He was advised that it would take 3 to 6 months to arrive, but we've had a bit of an issue with his photographs. So basically, the 2 photographs that the person being sponsored has to submit, one of those will have writing on the back by the photographer that took the photo. So it will say the principal applicant's name and then the address of the photography studio and the date. My husband's immigration officer accidentally gave that photo back to my husband and submitted the one without the writing on the back for processing. So at the start of January, my husband got a letter saying his photos weren't acceptable and that he needed to redo them and send them off. He did that straight away and we sent them off on the 5th of January, but at the moment we are still waiting to get his PR card. However, my dad, who arrived in Canada a day later than us, has already got his PR card, so he got his within about 2 months. I hope this was somewhat helpful. I know it's very, very brief. The problem is it's a very long-winded application process. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's really straightforward because there are bits of it that you will struggle with, and that's where I want to recommend a Facebook group which came really handy for us. It's called the Canada Spousal Sponsorship Support Group. I'm going to link it below, and it's full of people that have already done the application or are in the middle of doing the application, and you can pretty much go on there and ask any question on anything that you're not sure of within the application, and somebody will most likely have an answer for you because they're going to know from personal experience. I'd really recommend that group. I found it so helpful, and when I was unsure on certain things, I could either ask questions in there or like do a little search of the group to see if somebody had previously asked a similar question, and honestly that group is just so helpful. And I say that the application is long-winded, which it is, but I feel like so long as you read the instructions, cross-check everything, like we cross-checked hundreds and hundreds of times before we finally sent it off. As long as you cross-check and make sure you have everything and stick to that application kit and the checklist, you can't really go wrong, and it's a great immigration route for non-Canadians. We feel very lucky and blessed that we were able to do it, because I know Canada's not the easiest country to get into. It's not a case of just being able to decide one day that you want to live to Canada and you can just go and live there. It is quite difficult to get into. So it's a great immigration route for Canadians to go and live in Canada with their non-Canadian spouses. If you would like me to do a more in-depth video on the process, I can definitely do that at some point. But that's going to be a very long video to film, because as I said, there's so many sections in the application. There's going to be a lot to cover, so I think if I were to do that, it would have to be split over a few videos, and I would cover like one section per video because it's just very in-depth, whereas I've honestly just kind of skimmed past it all. But let me know if you would like me to do that. And our total processing time for our application was, we submitted our papers at the end of November, they arrived in Canada at the start of December, we got an acknowledgement of receipt in March, and then Richard got his confirmation of permanent residency papers at the end of July, so about 8 months for us. But you can't really go on processing times for anyone because everybody's case is so different. I've seen some people's cases on that Facebook group being done in like 4 months. Some people have been waiting over 2 years. So you can't really put a time frame on how long yours is going to take. It's just one of those things, unfortunately. It's so agonising waiting, I know, but it's just one of those things that you're just going to have to wait and just, it's going to take however long it takes, unfortunately. I want to wish you the best of luck with your application and your move to Canada. I hope it goes as quickly as it can for you. If you have any questions, then please feel free to ask me. I'll try and help in any way that I can. But as I stated at the start of the video, please bear in mind I'm not an immigration specialist or professional. I'm just giving tips on things that we did and how we found the process. That's all for today's video. If you'd like to see more Canada content, then please consider subscribing. I post new videos every Monday and Friday, and also check out my social media channels linked below. I'm Lara, this is Our Life in Canada, and until next time, take care.